What's up, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Chicago Football Show. I'm Scott Bair, alongside my normal castmate, Michael Norman. Carmen Vitale is out, and in her place, we have one of my favorite guys on the Chicago Bears beat. Nicholas Moreano is joining the show. You can catch his work essentially everywhere. Most notably, he's writing about the Bears for the Bigs. And if you have not subscribed to the Nicholas Moreano Show on YouTube, you're doing yourself a disservice. Lots of good analysis, the Moreano Minute, and then more expanded coverage as well. So we're definitely excited to have you here, Nick. And let's just open it up, generally speaking, because we're in the off-season. The off-season program has shut down. What were your overall impressions of watching Ben Johnson work, of watching Dennis Allen work, and kind of give us a good 30,000-foot view of what you saw over the course of the spring?
Well, I think the first word is intensity, you guys. Like, you felt that from not just Ben Johnson, Eric Bieniemy, the running backs coach, Antoine Randall L, the wide receivers coach. Really, everywhere you look at this Bears coaching staff, there is that intensity and really this focus on the details, wanting to make sure that if something goes wrong in practice, these coaches are gonna get on these players, whether it's your quarterback or your starting linebacker, whoever it may be. Like, that was an emphasis that Ben Johnson, this staff, established really early on, and I'm expecting that to continue as we kind of go into training camp and from here on out.
Yeah, going into training camp, I feel like Ben Johnson did set that tone now, right? Like, all the players that you heard at the podium talking were really about, we're all locked in, we're really focused, and we're really going ahead. So I feel like Ben Johnson, the important thing for him was to set the tone in these mini camps. But going into training camp, how important will it be for them to really kind of get off to a good start? Obviously, it's their first time doing this full go in training camp. How important do you think is it for them to really get off on the right foot?
Well, there's so many new pieces here, whether it's offensively and defensively, with new systems in place with Dennis Allen and Ben Johnson, of course. So I think it's crucial for this team to start off quick and start off efficiently. And especially when you have three new players on the interior of the O-line learning a new offense, you want to make sure that you're making steady progress throughout the summer, so that when you get to these preseason games, these joint practices, you know where you stack up and where you need to still improve as you head into that Monday night matchup against the Minnesota Vikings on week 1. So I think it's crucial to get that established early on and just know that you're making steady progress. And again, going back to the details, if something is wrong in a play, Ben Johnson needs to identify it, blow the whistle like he's done plenty of times throughout rookie and OTAs, and make sure things get right.
Yeah, and one of Ben Johnson's last comments in one of his last press conferences was, "We're not ready for prime time." And I think alluding to that primetime game against Minnesota, but they shouldn't be at this point in the spring. Now, I'm going to transition that comment. He wasn't talking about Caleb Williams specifically, but as you're watching Caleb Williams over the course of the spring, how does your evaluation shift, kind of knowing, look, he's learning a new system, he's learning new details and new techniques. How does that guide your evaluation of the Bears quarterback?
Well, I think the big thing I'm going to be monitoring from him as we're kind of going throughout the OTAs and then into training camp is just his comfortability in the pocket when he's kind of operating this offense there, Scott. So we know Caleb Williams can get outside the pocket and improvise, and he even showed that at times throughout OTAs. But I'll be more so focused on seeing what he's doing when he has to go off of one read and quickly make a decision to go to his second read and play within the pocket. That's how Jared Goff was so successful in Detroit the last 3 seasons when Ben Johnson was the OC. So that's going to be, I think, really important to monitor for Caleb Williams, to know that this offense is tracking in the right direction and that Caleb Williams will hopefully make a big leap in year 2.
And just thinking about Caleb Williams in year 2, I think a lot of fans are going to be looking to see improvement right away, right? Like, the pressure really isn't going to be higher than it is going to be right off the bat for Caleb. It's going to mount, especially if the Bears offense starts slow, if it were to happen. On the flip side, what are going to be some signs for fans to maybe look for early on in training camp or in the preseason games that maybe fans could see kind of with the naked eye just watching, that could be signs of maybe the offense is clicking or Caleb Williams is kind of showing a little bit of improvement?
I think I'm going to be focused on two things here. One, if Caleb Williams is taking checkdowns, you guys, I'm not going to be opposed to that. I think that's actually a good thing for Caleb Williams to look for some of these smaller plays instead of going for home runs every single time. That's how you stay on track in terms of down and distance and make sure the offense is continuing to roll in the right direction. But also, one area of his game that needs to drastically improve is a deep ball. So when he does have those opportunities to get one-on-one shots to Roman Dunze, Luther Burden when he's healthy, guys like that, we just need to see him become more accurate. So it's a little bit of both areas that I'm watching there. But if we're in training camp practice, they're in a situational type of drill where they have to drive down the field. You take the check down one play and then go for the home run the next. Like that, I think is going to be steady progress for Caleb Williams in year two.
Yeah, I think he was never less effective than when he was kind of running around from sideline to sideline trying to find somebody and then chucking it deep, incomplete. That those are not kind of productive passes. And you talk about, checkdowns and working the ball to the running backs, but the tight ends are such a big part of Ben Johnson's offensive philosophy. And we haven't seen the guy practice a single time yet. So we're still judging it based upon his college tape and his potential. But let's phrase this right. What are the realistic expectations for Colston Loveland in year one? Tight end is a complicated position from a physical and a mental aspect. Bring some perspective to maybe what fans can look for from Colston Loveland in year one.
I think the big thing for him, and like you said, it's a tough position to learn because you got to learn the run blocking responsibilities as well as being a nuanced route runner. But he should be a mismatch, a chess piece in Ben Johnson's offense, especially when he gets matched up. If defenses want to do it against linebackers and even safeties, he's going to have the size on them. So what I'm looking in terms of a rookie year from Colston Loveland is that when you have some of these situational type third down plays for Loveland, like he should be a guy that you look for because he does create a mismatch against a smaller target in a safety and a slower target in a linebacker most times. So I think that's going to be the key for Ben Johnson because when he was in Detroit, he had Sam Laporta, which is a great asset to have. But in this offense, you do also have Cole Kmet. So there's going to be a little bit of this sharing balance that they're both going to have to play here, but he should be a mismatch target for whoever he's against.
Loveland might be a mismatch, and another guy the Bears are hoping will become a mismatch is Luther Burden. But just like Loveland, he was another guy that missed time here in the minicamp. We heard Ben Johnson talk a little bit about how that might impact those guys going forward. How concerned are you about those guys missing camp and maybe, starting behind the eight ball as it might be heading into training camp?
Yeah, look, it's never a good thing when you get a new offense, a new coaching staff, and yet you're not out there on the practice field. We didn't see him one time. There were practices where I didn't see either guy out there. So it is a little bit concerning. I will definitely say that. And it's not that they're still getting mental reps, but I think the biggest thing for any of those rookies is that they need to get on the field. Like you have Olamide Zaccheaus taking Luther Burden snaps. You have guys like Devin Duvernay taking those snaps. So if you're a guy like Luther Burden, this is also an offense that's going to be complex for the wide receivers as well. So hopefully he's good to go by training camp and just catching up to speed and is able to create some separation against some really quality DBs that the Bears do have, but definitely not an advantageous situation to be out during the OTAs in this offseason training program.
Yeah, maybe just call me a scarred Bears fan a little bit because when I see our rookie wide receivers or even, playmakers, guys that are already hurt before training camp, it's hard not to flash back to some guys like Kevin White or some offensive playmakers. Gabe Carimi comes to mind, a guy that, just could really never stay on the field. It brings back bad memories, and that's tough. I know a lot of Bears fans kind of look at it like that, but Luther Burden and the wide receiver room specifically, I think that's going to be an interesting thing, just kind of looking at training camp and how's the season going to develop. What are realistic expectations for the wide receiving room this year?
Man, I mean, that's a great question. Like, obviously, there's only one football, and when you have guys as talented as DJ Moore, Roman Dunze, who I expect to take a big step in year two, Luther Burden added to the equation, it's hard to say exactly stat-wise what they're going to do, but they should each have their own individual types of plays within this offense. And I think that's what Ben Johnson also said in one of his press conferences, that they're still trying to figure out what route concepts are going to be catered to each guy. So that's what this whole entire period, this offseason training program, training camp is going to be about, finding what best suits all these guys. But would it be crazy to think that if everything is actually working in this Ben Johnson offense, that DJ Moore and Roman Dunze can't be 1,000-yard receivers. I think that's very possible given the talent that both those guys have. And, this is still a Ben Johnson offense. As much as they like to run the ball in Detroit with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, when you have weapons like that, the pass catching targets, you got to utilize them.
Hey, I guess I'll just keep this question really simple. Were you surprised, or are you surprised that they haven't added to the running back room outside of a 7th-round draft pick?
Scott, I didn't think that they would add anybody immediately. And I say that because I think this coaching staff need to see what they actually had in the running back room. But now that you don't have, you don't have a guy like Nick Chubb available or Dobbins available because they got picked up, it is interesting that it looks like at this point they're running with who they got. And maybe they're just a little bit higher on DeAndre Swift than some people might be. And even like a guy like Roschon Johnson, who Ben Johnson said is going to be more of the physical type of back in this offense. And then you can't forget Kyle Monangai. So it's going to be, maybe what they lack in the running backs with the Bears, they'll make up for it with the tight end group that they have here in Chicago that they didn't quite have in Detroit just because they only had one in Sam Laporta. So this Bears offense is not going to be the same exact version that Ben Johnson was running in Detroit. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think also if you look at the offensive line additions, that's kind of part of adding to the running game, right? Because if you look at what DeAndre Swift did in Philadelphia when they had an all-world offensive line, he was never better. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into the Bear structure. You were talking about checkdowns, right? And DeAndre Swift is a good receiver out of the backfield, and we saw him be a home run hitter. But you keep hearing when you ask about DeAndre Swift, hard worker and all that, but it's like detail-oriented, following tracks. I mean, even if you go back to last year, even Matt Eberflus was talking about making sure that you're following your blocking, more details, but they seem to have faith in this guy because he can, do it all. I hate to ask another realistic expectations question, but how do you think he's going to fit into all this? We've seen some clues going back to when Ben Johnson was OC with the Lions. How is he going to fit into all this with all these offensive weapons?
Yeah, no, I think this should be a year, given the additions on the interior of the offensive line, where we do see a bounce back season for DeAndre Swift. And I think a big part of that's going to be Eric Bieniemy. Like, he's a guy that we've all heard him in practice at this point. Like, he is not afraid to sugarcoat anything when it comes to his position group. So if you're not on the right tracks, you're going to hear about it. And it's just going to be honest. So that's going to help DeAndre Swift, I think, throughout the season. So when you look at the offense, it's just the additions you made on the interior of the O-line, that should open up some things that will not allow DeAndre Swift to want to bounce outside all the time, but stay within the track. Trust that block. And trust that the guy's going to get to the second level to allow DeAndre Swift to make a bigger run inside that he would last year, because he would want to bounce it out and maybe lose a couple of yards. So I think it's going to be huge with the 3 additions on the interior of the O-line, but how Eric Bieniemy coaches that group throughout the season.
Well, you can't talk Bears football if you start on running. What comes up naturally, it's defense, right? Yeah. We always got flipping to the other side of the ball. And defensively, I'm hoping that this is one of the more improved units in the league. But obviously, with Dennis Allen coming in, it's going to be a different style, and he's going to have to maybe take some time to kind of mold the players and mold the scheme together with each other. Do you think that Dennis Allen's impact is going to be more schematically, or can it be more of an impact overall, being a guy that can help Ben Johnson, take a little bit of pressure off of him? He'll run the defense. Ben Johnson can focus on the other things. Where do you think his biggest impact is going to be felt?
It's hard to say which one has a bigger impact, because obviously with Dennis Allen being a former head coach, that I think helps out Ben Johnson just logistically with some of the things that go on throughout the week as you're game planning week to week for an opponent. But schematically, I'm really curious to see what this defense looks like and how a guy like Montez Sweat is going to be used on a down-to-down basis, or actually the entire defensive line, because we've heard from multiple guys in that D-line throughout the offseason training program, and they're like, well, Dennis Allen's complex. We might be in a different alignments, different stances, different parts of the defense. And that, I think, can help unlock a guy like Montez Sweat, who had a down year. And if he has another down year, you guys, that's not going to bode well for Dennis Allen his first year as a DC here in Chicago. But schematically, there's going to be some complex blitzes Montez Sweat's not going to line up just opposite the right tackle anymore. He's going to be lined up along the entire defensive line. So I think you're going to see an immediate impact of what that can do for the defensive front and how that obviously affects the linebackers and then the secondary players.
Yeah, and I think everything that you were saying was kind of echoed from the players that we heard from over the course of the offseason program, including Gervon Dexter and Tyreek Stevenson, who discussed Dennis Allen's impact this spring.
Defense is like it's a lot of different, he throws in a lot of different fronts, a lot of different ways to, get after the quarterback and stuff like that. So I think the type of guy I am, I can play in a lot of those different fronts. So just being in it and the way, he'll move guys around, the way the offense, he'll switch it up on the offense. It'll be good for not only me, but everybody on the defensive line and on this defense.
I love it. It's in most of the defenses for the corner is man on man. So it's Imano. I'm gonna show you I've been working and I'm better than you, and I feel like that's can take a lot of the guessing out of the game for the corners.
It's going to be a heavy volume of press man, I'd imagine. Is that right up your alley for what they're asking?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I like it. It gives me room to improve on myself because if I get beat, that means I did something in my technique that created a flaw to allow you to win. So I like that. It just, like I said, take out the guessing for me. So.
Yeah, Nick, I found something really interesting that Tyreek Stevenson said just about knowing that they're going to have to play a lot of press man coverage. Well, they didn't have a lot of talent turnover in the secondary. Is there the talent to run a press man scheme, especially within that cornerback core?
Absolutely, Scott. I think that actually caters better to what the personnel the Bears currently have, especially a guy like Tyreek Stevenson. He's been known for playing with some physicality, and that got him in trouble at times, especially during his rookie season. But I think when you're now being asked to play closer to the line of scrimmage, use his long arm to affect the routes that these wide receivers are trying to run, that should help him out. And when you talk to Jalen Johnson, he is all about wanting to shadow opposing number one wide receivers. So when you factor all that into the equation, I think you're just going to see a more aggressive Bears defense, but especially that secondary with guys that I think are up for the challenge of shadowing and just playing more press man. And, like you said, if you do something wrong, you're definitely going to be shown like a big play can potentially happen if that were to occur. But I think the Bears do have the personnel to actually run that type of defense.
It should be fun to see maybe a little bit more of an aggressive defense. In past years, especially with Eberflus, it was more of a reacting defense, it felt. And it seems like in the NFL, if you're dictating terms, you can really kind of set yourself up. Last question I got for you, Nicholas, and thanks again for joining us, is just kind of looking into training camp, what is going to be the biggest storyline outside of Caleb, outside of Ben Johnson, that maybe we should focus a little bit more time on, and maybe that fans aren't kind of thinking about right now?
This is a storyline that I'm sure every Bears fan has on their mind, but it's definitely worth watching for. It's like, how quickly does the left tackle position get solidified? When it's either going to be Ozzie Trapillo, you have Karan Amagaji in the mix, and whenever Braxton Jones gets back to being healthy, I'm curious to seeing how long the Bears are going to allow that to play out before they name a starter. Because I do believe that you want to make that decision sooner rather than later. So you just establish continuity along the offensive line in the summertime. So by the time you get into preseason, that first game against Minnesota, you already knew who your starter was. So that's something I'll definitely be keeping my eyes on.
Nicholas Moreano, thank you so much for taking the time to break down the Bears offseason program and what to look forward to next. Don't forget, subscribe to the Nicholas Moreano Show and see his writing with the Bigs, and follow him on social. His Moreano Minute's really fun, especially after practice. You get everything that you need to know in one small bite. Nicholas, thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys. See ya.
Thanks again to Nicholas Moreano for joining the Chicago Football Show, which you can find pretty much anywhere on YouTube, on the Watch Marquee channel, on the Watch Marquee app, and of course on your television on Marquee Sports Network. So appreciate you joining us. Appreciate Nicholas Moreano joining us. Mike, what was your biggest takeaway from that conversation?
Well, a lot of great stuff from Nicholas. I do love the defensive talk. I'm just as excited as he is to see what Dennis Allen can kind of bring to the table. But it was kind of one of the questions that you brought up, specifically about, do you feel the Bears needed to add to the running back room? And was it a sign that maybe they didn't? This is a conversation that we've had the last few weeks, and I think, Bears fans have kind of talked about this since the draft. When you bring in Kyle Monangai, the 7th-round draft pick, that's maybe the last move that you're expecting as a Bears fan. No free agency as of right now. Nick Chubb obviously signing with the Texans. What are your kind of thoughts of that? I know as we're getting closer, is the days tick away and no moves get made. This is who you're with, right? This is the room that you have, and this is the running backs you're going to go forward with.
Yeah, I think that's starting to be the case. The reason why I was screaming for them to sign another veteran was that there were quality veterans available. You mentioned Nick Chubb. J.K. Dobbins was on the street forever. Now he's with the Denver Broncos. And that the free agent pool doesn't look as great as it did 10 days ago now. So I think that's why I really thought that they needed to add another body. And it's not to recreate Sonic and Knuckles, because that's just not going to happen with the talent that was available and the talent that's in-house. But as our old friend Carmen Vitale likes to say, sometimes actions speak louder than words. And maybe they have a higher opinion of the people in-house versus maybe the value of what those veterans were signing contracts for. So it's an interesting play about how they're going to move forward. I go back to usage last year, and I think there were a lot of problems with DeAndre Swift's game and his fit within that offensive scheme. I thought Nick broke that down well. I think something that I've complained about before is, why is Roschon Johnson only available on 3rd and 1 or in goal line situations? Maybe it's time to let him get out there and get more attempts in more kind of standard situations, maybe on 1st and 10, trying to stay on schedule. And then with the kid out of Rutgers, he's a guy that Ben Johnson singled out already to be a detail guy. I mean, go look at Sports Reference about his numbers at Rutgers. And Rutgers doesn't play at a mid-major. They play in the Big Ten, right?
Big Ten football, baby.
And he's producing against those tough defenses. And that tells you something. Whether it translates to the NFL, we don't know, right? But I think that it's going to be one of those deals where maybe they're more confident in these running backs than we had given them credit for, because you're trying to kind of assign stereotypes. Well, Ben Johnson was in Detroit when they traded DeAndre Swift. That can't be a positive, right? Or maybe Roschon Johnson wasn't able to get on the field a lot. So is that a negative? Well, maybe Ben Johnson's bringing new ideas to this current running back group, and they had opportunities and the cap space after that Joe Thuney extension to go get somebody, and they chose not to.
Well, you bring up cap space, and I think maybe that's one of the things that we have to think about as well, too. We know that Ryan Poles values flexibility and values maybe not putting all his eggs into one basket, where a couple years down the road, even if it's a 1 to 2 year contract, maybe it's not for the better of your franchise. I think it's going to be something to still to follow. I don't think that story is done yet. I think that if there is a possibility of bringing in somebody or a need, obviously we know things happen and injuries might pop up as well. I don't think that they're going to rest and, say that, hey, the job's done, we got our guy. I think that they're obviously going to be open to those possibilities, but maybe it's a vote of confidence, but maybe it's also an indication that they weren't as worried about it as maybe we were on the outside of it. Like you're saying, maybe they wanted to evaluate it once they saw a few things and they were able to get a guy that they felt comfortable with in Monangai, that maybe it was more one of those things that they'll address it down the road a little bit bigger. You can either take the big swing, and that would have been going for Genty in the draft, going for a guy maybe in the 2nd round in the draft, or you could kind of play your cards slow, kind of let it come to you. So I thought that was interesting. And I think, obviously with the position of running back in Ben Johnson's offense, that is kind of the sexy position right there. At least it was last year, right? We know that was kind of the guys that were the bell cows for the Detroit Lions. So everybody's going to be watching that, but it's not like you don't have playmakers on that offense. So I think we shall see, and we're going to have to give the coach a little bit of time to kind of, assess that lineup. But not only was he assessing his own roster, Ben Johnson did a little self-evaluation. Here's what he had to say about, his performance at his first minicamp.
Well, I'm critical of myself. The practice was probably, it can be a little bit smoother in terms of how we function. I need to communicate to everyone a little bit better, whether it's the coaching staff, the equipment staff, and I'm going to get better there. I'll do a better job once we get to camp. But I was really impressed with the entire coaching staff. I mean, we've got the right mix of guys, experience, youth, energy, ideas. It's coming together, and I hope our players have really understood. It's hard to gain trust in such a short period of time, but hopefully they understand that our guys mean business. This coaching staff means business. They know what good football looks like. They know what winning football looks like, and they're committed to bringing that here.
Scott, you've been around the game. You've seen coaches come and go. You've seen new coaches come in. And obviously, you've seen coaches that have had success and some that haven't. What's kind of stood out to you with Ben Johnson's first minicamp?
I think everything that we just heard right there, because you have guys come in and they're fire and brimstone and they're yelling through megaphones and every little detail is a problem and you're tearing people down. That's not what Ben Johnson is doing. He's just making sure that everybody gets it right. But then he has the self-awareness to really reflect and be like, oh, maybe my practices could have been better. Or maybe I can refine this part of my game to help increase the standard and the level of detail that I'm requesting. It's not all about they did it wrong and I'm always right. And that kind of mixture of being able to self-scout, that's a term that coaches use a lot around the bye week or heading into a season. I think to actually say that, and he's so confident, because every time he steps in front of a podium, whether he's dealing with this Caleb Williams situation or he's addressing himself or one of his players, he kind of tells you like it is, because he's confident in his own skin and he knows what this answer is. There's no reason to hide it because it's the truth. And I think that's an interesting way that just to see him during these access points, to see him operating during these practices, and then for him to go, wait a minute, maybe, I don't know what I don't know. Right. And then how can I learn? How can I grow it like as a coach from these experiences, as opposed to it's my way or the highway? That's interesting. Again, I've said several times, this guy's got it, even though I haven't seen him manage a game yet. But it's those types of things that I think should be looked at as encouraging signs about the culture and the tone and the standard that's being set in Hallis Hall since Ben Johnson was hired.
Yeah, it's not like we've never have heard of Bears coach say, oh, we have self-evaluate. Oh, I'm trying to look
Right.
and do better. Like, you hear every coach all the time say that kind of thing. So, like, why should we believe some of these coaches when they say that they are evaluating and correcting them in the right ways, right? But when Ben Johnson does say it, and how we've seen it in the past for him, his track record speaks for himself, that he is a guy that is able to recreate himself, to push forward, to bring new things to the table. And that's why he was so highly coveted for a lot of NFL teams, not just the Bears. If you look back on the coaching search, obviously for the last two cycles, Ben Johnson's name was up there as the number one guy or maybe the top two guys in the last two cycles, right? So I think it is very impressive to just see Ben Johnson be comfortable, at least in front of the media, right? Like, most football coaches or football-y football guys, they're comfortable being football guys, right? You get them out on the field, they could be football coaches, right? That's what they're trained to do. But to have the ability to do both, that doesn't mean you're going to win games. I'm not saying it's going to help them on the field, but it's just such a difference, right? It is such a difference, and especially it's such a difference from the last coaching staff that we had there, where it just felt that, especially when the coaching staff, the previous coaching staff would get up there, they were just inauthentic. There was just certain things like, we haven't heard an acronym thrown out there yet, Scott. Is that a good thing? like the HITS principle hasn't come up yet. No. I didn't know if Ben Johnson knew how to spell just because he hasn't thrown out an acronym to us, but that's probably a good thing. But, speaking of acronyms and the HITS principle, we might as well just bring up the old coach and Matt Eberflus and some of the news that maybe kind of floated around after the Caleb Williams incident, or the Caleb Williams news that floated out about all the news of in the offseason, Caleb Williams in stories talking about maybe didn't get the best coaching, maybe didn't get the most direction in film rooms. Matt Eberflus was able to respond. As everybody knows, or as most people know, Matt Eberflus is now the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. So Matt Eberflus was able to say on the Doomsday podcast, I would say this, quote, in the development of the quarterback position and really all the positions at my time at the Bears, we always had daily coached film sessions. That was through the entire year. That's what I observed, and that's where it was. Scott, obviously you were around him last year, and you're around the team. We know things like this come out after the fact when coaches get fired or when players move on. But what do you kind of make about Matt Eberflus' side of this and really just the whole story that we've had to talk about for the last month or so?
Yeah, I watched that section of the Doomsday podcast, and he was so uncomfortable talking about it. He didn't want the topic brought up clearly, and he had a big sigh before he had to address it, and he addressed it. I'll say a couple of different things. It was very clear when Matt Eberflus was here that they often talked about that the head coach and Caleb Williams would have regular meetings. So that was a part of it. I'm not saying that they were watching film all the time, but that was a part of it. And this, having film available in the meeting rooms and things like that, that is standard practice. So if he's not getting instruction, or if he's being handed something or something's downloaded to his iPad and he's not being told, hey, look at this, even that is a problem. You also have to think about the original quote from the book excerpt from Seth Wickersham's the biography of the quarterback, is that this is something that Caleb told his dad, who told a reporter. Like, we're starting to play a game of telephone a little bit. So I think that there are certain elements of what Caleb was saying and how he addressed it. That's true. I think he and Shane Waldron were oil and water, simply. But then I also look at it and I kind of think about, yeah, he probably did have some film sessions with coaches and he wasn't totally lost, but there were probably times where, knowing his commitment and his competitive drive, that he wanted to do more and the instruction wasn't available or something like that. So I can see kind of both things being true. And I think that that's kind of how, these things are going to get addressed. And even though it's very clear that Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and I even think a good portion of the Bears fan base kind of just want this to be over, these types of things are going to keep coming up, right? This is going to be the story with 1,000 tentacles. It's going to come up again when the book is released in September. These little things are going to keep coming up. And then Caleb Williams called it a distraction. I'm glad he did, because that's what it is. But again, I think they'd rather deal with the meat of this during the offseason than in week one. Mike, I did want to change topics here. If you don't mind, we're going off script, because I think it's something that you can be a unique resource for. And here's what it is that you were kind of talking about past coaches and how Ben Johnson sounds different, right? And we talked about Matt Eberflus a little bit, but you've been around following the Bears for a long time, through Matt Nagy, right? Through John Fox, and probably Mark Trestman, right? So I guess I'm just curious, as somebody who's heard a lot of the coach rhetoric, how does this level of optimism, does it compare to the Nagy hire? Does it compare to something else before it? Or is this unique? How is this different, if you were to kind of think back through your head of all these kind of first-year head coaches?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because, we had Father's Day this past weekend, and a belated happy Father's Day to you, Scott. Hope you had a great Father's Day. We were able to spend it with some family, so that was a great day. But, when you spend time around family, especially Chicago families, the Bears tend to come up. It's kind of it's one of those it's a topic of conversation. And most people, at least on my side of the family, a lot of people are very optimistic. I think there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic, and I think Chicago fans in general are optimistic about Ben Johnson and the way that he's come in. But, and I kind of said it with Nicholas on before, like, there is this scarred Bears fan mentality that still exists, and I think that not only are Chicago Bears fans, but a lot of them are Cubs fans or White Sox fans or Bulls fans, where you've had it in the past where you've had the wonder kids come in. You had the prodigies come in. Matt Nagy was billed as, one of the smartest offensive minds in the game. And there's no doubt that he was. I think it's very obvious. Matt Nagy's obviously a good football coach. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be good head coaches, right? And we know that is such a hard transition for any sport, but specifically in football, to go from chair number 2 to chair number 1. So for Ben Johnson to come in here and to really just give positive vibes, what like negative story has come out about Ben Johnson since he signed with the Bears? Not many, right? Like, I just joked about Matt Eberflus and his hits principle. Like, I know, like, that's fun for us to joke about, and like, looking back on it, it kind of sucks because, like, you knew right then, it was like, this guy maybe isn't cut out for it. But there haven't been moments like that with Ben Johnson, right? And I think, if nothing else, that should give Bears fans the confidence enough to know that this guy's genuine. This guy knows what he's doing. Does that mean he's going to win? Maybe, maybe not. That's going to be up to the players on the field. But in the past, you just, as a Bears fan, it was either they didn't get the top guy in the cycle. Maybe they went with a guy that is unproven. Obviously, Ben Johnson's that. But nobody's had the resume that Ben Johnson's now put up coming into it. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic as well. If I would gauge my families, like I heard, he's just selling us a bill of goods once or twice. Oh, I'm not going to say who it was, Auntie Joyce. All right. I'm not going to say if Auntie Carol was fully on board with it. But, sometimes they're a little skeptical. My mom also said the same thing about Theo Epstein coming to Chicago. And, Theo produced for the Cubs. So I just want to throw that out there. So we got pump the brakes. It'll be all right. Hopefully Ben Johnson can kind of change the title. But, you never know. You just never know until they actually get out there and play.
Yeah, and it's so interesting learning about this fan base in my short time in the Windy City. Is that there are battle scars, right? Like you mentioned Kevin White syndrome, right? Like that's a real thing when you have a super hyped guy that just doesn't pan out. And there's reason for optimism. And when your optimism goes up and then the disappointment hits, it's a crash, right? Like because it's build up, and then it's just flatlined. And that I think is the most difficult thing.
The one thing on the flip side, though, I will say with that, Scott, though, is that the dynamic of this, and I battle with myself too, is the Bears have had years, these random one-off years where they pop up and they get a first-round bye, right? I know it's been a while, but like 2018, that was a magical year. So like Bears fans still believe, and every year they believe because it's something that could happen. Does it mean it will happen? We'll find out. But I think that it is an optimistic group. I know you're learning the fan base in that sense, but you see it. Like there's as much negativity, but then positivity always comes back around in January. When the draft happens, people are ready to go as well, too. So training camp, people are going to be excited for sure.
Yeah, and this training camp coming up, you pointed out something really smart, too, is that I can't think of a negative Ben Johnson storyline since he's been hired, like not a single one. And I think that honeymoon period is fair and appropriate, but heading into training camp, we're going to see a little more real football, right? That we're going to keep kind of building on those things. And then going back to kind of Nicholas Moreano's, what he's looking forward to with training camp. He said the left tackle battle. As you kind of see training camp off in the distance, is there something that you're looking forward to seeing in person when we're all out there doing the Chicago football show?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I am pumped to get out there, Scott. I know you are as well. I'm excited. If forever, I've always wanted to go to training camps when they're in Bourbonnais, but the Bourbonnais is so far. So I am so happy when they're moving to Elvis Hall. It was so much easier for us to get out there. So I was happy when they finally did that. But for anybody that hasn't been out to training camps, they're so fun. And they are definitely something I would encourage for people to get out there just to be able to see these guys in practice and be up close. You see how big football players really are, and that's one of the things. You see how fast they are, see how athletic these guys are. And for me, the one I'm very excited about is the wide receiver room, but not because of Luther Burden's injury. It's more so I want to see if DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are going to step up and be this 1-2 punch that Bears fans really think they're going to be. We talked a little bit about that Kevin White syndrome applying to Luther Burden, but I don't know if you could necessarily say that Bears fans are out of the woods feeling like that with Rome Odunze yet, right? Rome Odunze came in as a top 10 pick, somebody that was highly drafted. If you don't have Caleb Williams as your number 1 overall pick last year, Rome Odunze would have had a lot more pressure on him last season than he did. So I think it was good for him to be able to ease into it, but now you're going to be expecting a lot out of him. And we know with Luther Burden maybe in the slot, you got Olamide Zaccheaus who could be battling as well. I'm interested to see how they're going to be used, who's going to step up, and can you have 2 guys that could go for 1,000 yards? Most Bears fans, you'd be happy with 1 guy going for 1,000 yards. If you could get 2, I mean, come on, that would be awesome. But really, you need to see guys step up in that room. So I'm looking forward to that when we get out there. How about you?
And there's a lot of these storylines coming into it. I look on the other side of the ball, and I look at a guy like Jaquan Brisker, and we heard from him, and we've talked about it on the Chicago football show before, and just about him working through all of these concussions and things like that. Let's let's remove that for just 1 second and talk about him as an on-field contributor and tone setter. He is a guy who makes a difference. He may not have Montez Sweat's height, weight, build. He may not have Jalen Johnson's, kind of shutdown, lockdown kind of pedigree, but this is a guy who changes games. And Dennis Allen recognizes that. And his defensive formations can kind of be all over the map, heavy on defensive backs. I think this is a guy who could be roaming all over the field. He's entering a contract year. He's motivated to prove that he can stay healthy. There's so much on the line for this guy. And he is clearly back to enjoying football again. And I think that that's something that his joy, you can feel it in the way that he plays. So I want to see him get out there and, knock on wood, really stay healthy, because I think this guy can be that type of contributor. He can be that type of guy, especially in this defense, where I think it's going to fit him well. He's going to play up close to the line. He might be an extra linebacker. He might play center field. I just think he's an interesting chess piece that Dennis Allen can use well. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to. And again, he talks so much about the mental grind of being away, and he kind of was vulnerable and opened himself up. And I think that that's another thing, is he's showing the human side of this game and how difficult it is with injuries and concussions and pressure and the need to get paid. I think he's a great example of all that. And that's what I think for Bears fans is going to make him an easy guy to root for.
Yeah, I hope everybody's rooting for him. When he gets back out on that field, first time at Soldier Field, I hope he gets a huge ovation, because he really feels like one of the heart and souls of that defense. And I'm going to throw out a nickname, not necessarily a guy's name, but a nickname. And I hope that Jaquan Brisker can kind of become this guy within Dennis Allen's defense, and it's the Honey Badger, right? I know that might be throwing a lot out there, but the Honey Badger and the way that he could be used and the way he's able to be kind of one of the roamers, like you said. You think that's a good comp? Can that be a guy that Dennis Allen likes to maybe emulate?
I think definitely that's the case, and I'm sure, as our audience just heard, I think that the guy mowing the lawn behind me definitely feels that way too. I think that's important, but yeah, I think that those types of comparisons are good, and I think that Dennis Allen's defense does a lot of different things. If you go back to what Matt Eberflus's defense functioned as, and he's a good defensive schematics guy, he's a good play caller. But he liked to get away with rushing 4. And I think that's true. But go back and look at some of the sack totals for Saints interior/middle linebackers. Those guys attack the quarterback. I think Tremaine Edmonds, with his speed, is a great fit for what the Bears will like to do under Dennis Allen. So that's another guy that I think could be really intriguing, that some fans are probably kind of soured on, because they're like, we paid this guy a bunch of money. He's not been the all-world type of Roquan Smith guy that is what he's turned into, especially in Baltimore. And I think that those are the things that I'm interested in. And I don't think that that's an unjust comparison. It's about, for Brisker, I think it's about staying healthy. I mean, maybe he's not the truly dynamic talent that some of these elite safeties are, but I'm not going to put a ceiling on this guy, not at this point. And if he can stay healthy and he can get merged into this defense, again, I think the guy can be a game changer. I know it was only 5 games last year that he was available for, but he made an impact on each and every one of them, and they were winning ball games back then. I'm not saying he was the reason why they lost all of them. Clearly, that team from last year had a bunch of problems, but I think he's one of those guys that you can look at and you have to account for him, and he can be an impact guy. So, I think that that's pretty interesting for sure.
Brisker is just one of those guys. You got to know that all those other players in that huddle, look, when they see that guy in the huddle with them, they know that he's got their back, right? He is that kind of guy that's going to come up and lay the wood. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be watching too. Hey, if we see a couple 9 flashing by us, a couple pops in training camp, I know they're not supposed to be hitting too much, but I wouldn't hate it. I'd love to see Jaquan Brisker laying out some guys. Another thing in training camp, and obviously we're a little bit away, so things could change, but the one thing that I think will be big for this team is going to be how they bring along these young guys. And we talked a little bit about Colston, Loveland. We talked a little bit about Luther Burden, but we can't forget you have another second-round draft pick in Turner, and then you also have a few guys like Hippolyte that maybe if you hit on these could help fill out your roster. It's going to be about depth. in some of these positions. Talked a little bit about Kyle Monangai as well in that. Do you think the Bears have enough depth going into training camp where it's going to be noticeable compared to maybe in the past years where you knew that they're a little light going into training camp?
I think so, because I was doing an offensive line depth chart the other day because I'm a nerd and those are things that I do in my spare time.
Yeah, just a Friday night,
Yeah,
just
means
pour
I
a
probably
glass
need
of
a hobby.
wine, check out the second tackle. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know how you roll, Scott. Yeah.
And I can tell you, I had a tough time whittling down 9 guys. Like there were some what I would consider deserving talents that were left off. And if we can relate that to the defense here, you're looking at that defensive line mix. You're looking at maybe 8 or 9 guys there too. And it's going to be hard to pick that last guy because I do feel like they are deeper, feel like they're better. They're more capable of weathering injuries that seem inevitable. I mean, even Ben Johnson said it going back to his introductory press conference. You could feel it when Andrew Billings wasn't available. And that's because Andrew Billings is such an impact player, especially in run defense. But it's the other thing is that there was nobody else that could really kind of step into that unique role, and they suffered for it. And I think that we've seen clips of Dexter. We saw one in this show. The man is a massive human being. He's bigger than ever before, and I think he's ready to absorb the types of techniques and job requirements under Dennis Allen. I do think it's deeper. I think Hippolyte adds depth to the linebacker core. That secondary was deep already, so deep that I don't know how many safeties are going to be on the field at one time. It could be more than 2. So I just think that there's a lot of those things that they're better set up to weather a longer season. We're talking about Luther Burden a lot. How about a guy like Olamide Zaccheaus, who is what I would consider an NFL survivor, right? He's been on a bunch of teams, the Falcons, the Eagles, and the Commanders, and at every place, despite maybe being not a prototypical size or speed, he always finds ways to contribute. And I think that those types of guys exist on the roster. And you look at, oh man, the 4th wide receiver for the Bears is pretty darn good. And that's assuming that some of these rookies that we talk about, right? I think now is the time where we like dare to dream. Oh, are there going to be 3 rookie starters? Well, probably not. But these guys can be role players and grow into larger responsibilities and maybe starting spots. So not every draft pick has to turn out. But if Ruben Hippolyte can be a good injury protection for the interior guys, and he plays great special teams, and he can be a Sam linebacker sometimes, there's nothing wrong with that. So I think it's just about kind of figuring it out and understanding kind of where they are. And I do think from a talent perspective, they're in a better spot. There has been a lot of kind of Cole Kmet, Colston, Loveland, how will they fit together conversation. It's led to some trade rumors, which I think at this point are kind of unsubstantiated. But, I don't think they should trade him. 1, he has a giant cap number, and it doesn't necessarily help them to ship him off. But 2, he's still a good football player who can occupy a big role on this team. And we talk about depth here. Maybe he won't get the same number of targets, but he's a darn good football player. And I think he and Colston Loveland can coexist. And if one of them goes down, they still have a premier talent. That's my take. You absolutely keep Cole Kmet on this roster.
It would be surprising for sure. I know that obviously the talk of maybe can the 2 coexist. I definitely think they could coexist. I don't think it would be, kind of like attitudes mashing together. I think they could complement each other. But that being said, if you're Ben Johnson and you know good tight end plays and you feel confident that not only can you hit on Loveland, but maybe you could also have more depth if it wasn't Cole Kmet, maybe somebody overvalues him and maybe somebody would be willing to trade for it. So I wouldn't necessarily say I rule it out in the sense that if somebody came to me with a crazy offer and came to me with a big time offer and I felt comfortable knowing that Ben Johnson is a guy that is able to pick out tight ends, I would entertain the offer if I was Ryan Poles. but it would have to be for a lot, and you would have to feel very comfortable with the rest of the room. But that being said, Cole Kmet is a Chicagoan. He is a Bear. He has been a leader on this team for as long as he's been here now. I want to see Cole Kmet go out there when the Bears turn this around. I want to see him being one of the guys that leads the charge because he's definitely put in the work for that too. So I think they could coexist, but you never know. NFL is crazy sometimes.
Yeah, and I get that the NFL is a business. It's cutthroat when you have new coaches come in. Maybe opinions change, or maybe they don't, right? Maybe Ben Johnson sees a clear vision for what Cole Kmet can do. But I do think, just in terms of, if we're just talking about human beings here, Mike, like Cole Kmet has been through so much. It's sort of like if like you have a new stadium built and then you're like the team captain in the Oakland Coliseum or something like that. And then right at the end, right when you get good, you get shipped off. That just doesn't seem right, especially for a guy who's been such a good individual, right? He's just been around the block.
That would just
gets
hurt.
That he's from
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Well, and especially not only has he endured the Bears trauma of being on the Bears for the last few years, he grew up with it. So, of course, he wants the Bears to win. The guy is a Bear as true and true as it's been. So, yeah, we want to see Cole Kmet when this thing turns around, and hopefully we will this season as well. So it should be fun to see all 85 out there.
Yeah, and I really think he's going to be a key piece of this next season. You know what else is going to be a key piece of the 2025 season? The Chicago Football Show, because we're going to be with you all the time at camp each and every week throughout the regular season and next Tuesday, like we always are. For Mike, I'm Scott. We'll talk to you again real soon.